mother of one, Natalie Arthur, was at the Peppermint Bar in Swansea, Wales, on November the 17th of 2022. Arthur, who was at the time in her mid-30s, was applying lipstick in the mirror of the women's restroom when Emily Williams stormed inside and screamed at her, "Who do you think you are?" Williams and Arthur were complete strangers to each other, and before the latter could even understand what the former meant, she was attacked. Williams smashed a glass that she was carrying and then started viciously stabbing Arthur in the face. A witness would later report Williams appeared to be possessed while carrying out the stabbing, during the course of which she reportedly looked like she was cutting meat. Williams tried to stab the victim in the neck, but the glass grazed her chest and shoulder instead. Arthur later told the media, "I can remember looking in the mirror on the wall as we struggled and seeing flesh hanging off my face and nose. There was blood everywhere, like a scene from a horror movie." Arthur was hospitalized and treated for 3 days for the damage to her face, which resulted in permanent scars on her cheek and nose tip. The woman was unable to return to her job as a cleaner and also quit the Army Reserves, where she'd been training as a driver with the Royal Logistics Corps. Arthur noted that she no longer felt comfortable in the uniform because she didn't want to be mistaken for a hero who'd been hurt in the line of duty. Williams was arrested in the incident's wake, with her mugshot showing her displaying a wide-eyed smile. During the trial that followed, the 25-year-old denied using the glass in the attack, but offered no explanation on how Arthur's mutilating cuts had been inflicted. She was ultimately convicted of grievous bodily harm with intent, and a judge called her version of events complete fiction, while also describing the attack as wicked beyond belief. Williams, who was reportedly the sole carer for her 2 young children, was jailed for 5 years in March of 2024. Number 7. Antonio Tiir. 3 days before Christmas in 2022, a Romanian national went on a random stabbing spree on the streets of Birmingham, England. 25-year-old Antonio Tiir was at the time under the influence of alcohol and drugs. CCTV footage showed Tiir, who was wearing headphones, with an 8-inch knife in hand while moving towards a distressed 26-year-old woman as she backed away on Soho Road, Handsworth. Tiir slashed her with the blade, causing the woman to drop to the pavement and leaving her badly hurt. She was, however, able to flee and survived. Tiir was also caught on surveillance cameras attacking 35-year-old father Cristian Debski. The Romanian man plunged the blade into his chest with such force that it pierced through his ribs and severed his pulmonary artery. CCTV showed Debski running for his life after being stabbed. Law enforcement had already been searching for the knife man when they came across Debski's unconscious body. He was pronounced dead in a local hospital shortly thereafter. Less than a minute after mortally wounding Debski, Tiir knifed a 50-year-old man. The latter managed to run away and escaped with his life. During a Facebook Live video recorded at the time of the spree, Tiir spoke in Romanian to identify himself as a terrorist, adding, "I will kill anyone who comes across me." Roughly 15 minutes after he'd attacked his first victims, Tiir was spotted by West Midlands police. As shown in body cam footage, they charged the knifeman with their weapons drawn and a pistol rail-mounted laser pointed at his chest. Tiir was taken into custody, and officers also recovered the blood-covered blade he'd used in the spree. During the legal proceedings that followed, Woolwich Crown Court was told that Tiir had consumed vodka and cocaine over a 48-hour period, which led to him experiencing an acute psychotic event. He'd reportedly heeded voices in his head that pushed him towards violence. Judge Silvia Di Bertodano told the man, "At the time of the attacks, you felt untouchable and on a mission." Judge Di Bertodano accepted that Tiir had expressed remorse, as well as the fact that his onslaught had been triggered by substance abuse. Tiir admitted 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and also pleaded guilty to having a bladed article and possessing cocaine. In 2023, he was jailed for life with a minimum of 30 years behind bars. Number 6. Kio Thomas. On March the 19th of 2022, law enforcement in Maricopa County, Arizona, responded to reports of a car in a ditch near Honeycutt and White and Parker Roads in Maricopa, as shown in body cam footage, which subsequently went viral. Officers initially interacted with a man who was behind the wheel of the Chevrolet Camaro in question. He claimed that he had swerved off the road, thus rendering the vehicle inoperative. In the moments that followed, from the passenger seat, his girlfriend, Kio Thomas, admitted that she'd been the one driving. She was asked to exit the Camaro. The police observed that the young woman was slurring her words and was unsteady on her feet. Thomas admitted that she'd been drinking and she was handcuffed. While she was being led to the back of the police vehicle, Thomas started screaming that she had to urinate and didn't want to do so on herself in the car. Officers assured her that she could go to the bathroom at the station, which was less than a minute away and visible from where they were standing. After a brief struggle, Thomas sat in the back of the vehicle but then started screaming for her boyfriend and changed her story to say that he'd actually been the one driving. The young woman told one of the cops, "I want to speak to your manager." Thomas sat in the door of the police vehicle and refused to get the whole way in before kicking at an officer when he forced her legs inside. She subsequently also tried to kick the vehicle's door open. Thomas became verbally aggressive upon arriving at the police station. While she was being led into a holding cell, she started swearing at officers, telling them, "I hope your wife dies, I hope your mama dies, I hope everyone dies in your family." Once left alone in the cell, she started screaming from the top of her lungs. The police called for a crew from Maricopa Fire Medical to assess Thomas's health. The woman kept wailing in the cell, and when the door was open, she charged an officer and the medical staff. The cop reacted quickly and pushed her back inside, at which point she fell. While on the floor, Thomas persisted in kicking at the cops and medics while they were checking her vitals. Thomas faced 2 counts of aggravated assault on a police officer, but accepted a plea deal in May, admitting 1 count of attempted aggravated assault on an officer, for which she was handed a sentence of supervised probation. In December of 2022, Thomas was stopped by law enforcement while driving the wrong way on North John Wayne Parkway. She was in an advanced state of inebriation and performed poorly during field sobriety tests. An open bottle of wine was seen on the passenger side floorboard of her vehicle, and there was also spilled wine in the center console cup holder. At the time, Thomas had a suspended driver's license and was wanted on an outstanding warrant for extreme DUI stemming from the previous incident. She refused to provide a breath or blood sample and was arrested on suspicion of aggravated driving under the influence with a suspended license and driving under the influence while driving the wrong way. Number 5. Shawn Michaels Dunk. On December the 5th of 2023, Australian man Shawn Michaels Dunk showed up to a police station in Adelaide and told officers that he was experiencing hallucinations about people threatening to kill him. 30-year-old Dunk reportedly expressed a concern that he might hurt someone and was detained under the Mental Health Act. Dunk spent the night of December the 19th at the Urgent Mental Health Care Centre on Grenfell Street in Adelaide CBD. 2 hours after his release the following day, the man stormed into the real estate agents group in Plympton. Armed with a knife and a hammer, Dunk went on a rampage and attacked staff. He fatally stabbed mother of 2, Jules Seed, aged 38, and critically injured her colleague, 50-year-old Susan Scardino. The latter had been knifed while trying to protect Seed and was rushed to the Royal Adelaide Hospital, where she subsequently recovered from her injuries. Dunk, whose attack at the real estate agency had been entirely random, was arrested at the scene on charges of murder and attempted murder. Updates indicated that he didn't apply for bail, with his lawyer requesting a mental health evaluation. Dunk was set to appear in court on March the 28th of 2024 for a charge determination hearing. The reason for his release, given the fact that he himself believed he would commit acts of violence, was set to be reviewed. Law enforcement was highly critical of South Australia Health for routinely releasing potentially violent and unstable patients. Officers described it as an absolute failure of the system and a never-ending cycle. Number 4. Craig Radborne. In the early hours of her shift on July the 6th of 2014, Hampshire Police Sergeant Kerry Lawrence arrested Craig Radborne on suspicion of being drunk and disorderly in the town of Basingstoke. After he was handcuffed, 25-year-old Radborne began protesting the arrest before violently lashing out. The ensuing attack was captured by Lawrence's body cam. Through the open car window, Radborne pushed his handcuffed hands into Lawrence's face, knocking her down. The inebriated man then launched a vicious attack on the officer. He was recorded banging her head against the pavement multiple times, causing her to scream out in pain. Lawrence was able to radio for help from the central office, telling a colleague, "He smashed my head off the ground." Radborne was rearrested by backup officers. During the legal proceedings that followed, Judge Susan Evans, QC, described the attack as nothing short of sickening. In February of 2016, Radborne was jailed for 3 years after pleading guilty to a charge of assault causing actual bodily harm. Hampshire police described the attack as disgusting and a traumatic experience for Lawrence, who returned to her duties in the aftermath. Number 3. Emory Worldwide Airlines Flight 17. Shortly after taking off from Sacramento Mather Airport on February the 16th of 2000, Emory Worldwide Airlines Flight 17, a cargo flight, encountered problems. The Douglas DC-8 aircraft suffered what the captain identified as an extreme CG, short for center of gravity problem. He believed that a load shift had occurred on the plane as it moved erratically, entering a rapid descent after banking left. The crew, consisting of the captain, first officer, and flight engineer, tried to return to the airport and added power in an attempt to correct the descent. It proved effective only momentarily, as the DC-8 climbed slightly before it continued to drop left. Its wing clipped a 2-story building before crashing into an automobile salvage yard. The aircraft exploded into a torrent of flames, with the wreckage strewn across an area that was roughly 1,500 feet long. The 3 men aboard perished in the crash. An investigation of the accident concluded that it had occurred due to a single loose bolt. It had detached from the right elevator control tab, causing a loss of pitch control. The National Transport Safety Board's report found that Emory Worldwide Airlines, a major cargo airline in the US at the time, had conducted incorrect maintenance procedures, which led to the bolt being overloaded. The Federal Aviation Administration discovered over 100 further maintenance violations made by the airline. A year and several months after the Flight 17 disaster in August of 2001, Emory had its entire fleet grounded before permanently ceasing its operations in December. Number 2. Kiber Calderon. In August of 2023, law enforcement in Long Island, New York City, received reports of a gun-wielding suspect outside a 7-Eleven in Belmore. 31-year-old Kiber Calderon, also known as Hannah Carrillo, was captured on video taken over a busy intersection by aiming a pistol at motorists and bystanders. The viral clip showed Calderon aiming the silver firearm at his head before a marked police SUV came into view and slammed into him, impacting him with the front fender. The Brooklyn resident was sideswiped and knocked to the ground, whereupon 3 officers promptly intervened and made the arrest without further incident. Calderon's gun, which was loaded, was recovered from the scene. Calderon, who identified as male during his interview with law enforcement, faced 13 charges in the aftermath, including multiple counts of menacing and criminal possession. He'd been arrested twice in June in New York City for burglary and trespassing, but was released under a no-bail policy. The unnamed officer who'd struck Calderon was praised by Nassau Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder for his quick thinking. Ryder described his decision of ramming the suspect with the police car as potentially life-saving. Subsequent information on the case indicated that the officer had been hospitalized for trauma and hadn't returned to work. We'll line up our previous release about when cuckoo companions go wrong immediately after number 1. Stick around if you'd like to watch that crazy episode as well. Number 1. Kevin Costlo. On February the 6th of 2021, Maryland man Kevin Costlo veered into the oncoming lane while driving through Montgomery County. He forced a Ford Explorer off the road, causing it to crash into a telephone pole before striking a minivan head-on. No serious injuries were reported in either of the two crashes. 52-year-old Costlo then got out of his car and attempted to attack bystanders with a tree branch, which was initially misidentified during 911 calls as a baseball bat. Witnesses would later say of Costlo that he was amped up, aggressive, angry, and screaming like a lunatic. Sergeant Frank Pruitt from the sheriff's office arrived at the scene, a roadway near Laytonsville, and approached Costlo to check on him. The man charged the sergeant, knocking off his face mask and hat. Pruitt, an 18-year sheriff's office veteran, tried shooting Costlo with his taser, but the prongs reportedly didn't stick to his body. Pruitt was captured on bystander cell phone video, confronting 52-year-old Costlo with his weapon drawn. The sergeant backed away with the pistol aimed at Costlo, but the latter walked him down with the branch in hand before hitting him several times in the head and shoulder. At one point, Pruitt radioed for help, saying of the suspect, "He's losing his mind." Costlo struck the deputy with enough force that the tree limbs snapped and continued marching towards him. Pruitt would later report fearing that Costlo, who wasn't speaking coherently and growling during the encounter, would attempt to take his pistol. Pruitt then opened fire, discharging 12 shots, 10 of which struck Costlo in the torso, killing him. In the aftermath, following analysis of 2 bystander videos of the shooting, interviews with 13 witnesses, and Pruitt's own report, prosecutors concluded that the officer had taken legal action. He wasn't charged for the shooting after it was determined that he'd taken multiple steps towards avoiding the use of lethal force and then reacted to what he'd perceived as imminent danger. No drugs or alcohol were found in Costlo's system following an autopsy. As reported by his family, Costlo, a well-liked IT professional and skilled musician, had displayed inexplicable and uncharacteristic behavior during his final days, which they believed stemmed from him experiencing a psychotic episode. According to Costlo's wife, he heard voices, thought he was Jesus Christ, and spoke of impending doom. The night before the shooting, his wife had reportedly found him on the floor screaming, "They are going to crucify me." Number 8. Donna Marie Bell. On September the 21st of 2013, a violent argument erupted between British woman Donna Marie Bell and her partner, Scott Morrison, at their Leeds home. The cause of the row remained unspecified, but it escalated to Bell, then in her mid-20s, head-butting Morrison and repeatedly hitting him over the head with a kitchen bin. Morrison alerted the police, but by the time that officers arrived at the scene, Bell had viciously attacked him with a large kitchen knife. The mother of 4 reportedly laughed as she delivered 3 to 4 knife strikes, primarily aimed at her partner's neck. The man suffered a cut to his hand and neck as he scrambled to defend himself. Fortunately, his injuries weren't life-threatening. The knife attack was reportedly witnessed by the couple's young son. Bell was arrested and during the legal proceedings that followed, pleaded guilty to wounding with intent. She had previous convictions for violence, with her defense pointing to mental health problems as a factor in her recurrent aggressive outbursts. For the latest offense, Bell was ultimately jailed for 3 years and 9 months. Number 7. Byron Redmond. 26-year-old Byron Redmond went to his girlfriend's home in Dallas, Texas on July the 30th of 2022. The man, who was allegedly inebriated and enraged, confronted McKeeja Heath for spreading rumors regarding his behavior towards her during their 8-month on-again, off-again relationship. Redmond, an area rapper who performed as Smooth and whose lyrics often referenced guns and violence against women. After the two of them had engaged in a verbal dispute, Redmond brandished a pistol, which he aimed at Heath. He grabbed his ex-girlfriend by the hair and had her beg for her life as he pointed the weapon at her face, threatening to shoot. Heath later reported she could see directly down the barrel, and that the more she tried to avoid the weapon and get Redmond to loosen his grip on her, the angrier he got. The man brought Heath to her knees and continued spewing threats in her ear. The pistol then went off and Heath was shot through the neck. The woman remembered feeling like her whole body was paralyzed and thinking she was dead. She noted that in the gunshot's aftermath, Redmond came back to reality after having previously acted like he was possessed. He repeatedly apologized to her, maintaining that he hadn't meant to shoot and that the gun had gone off on accident. He carried Heath to the car, leaving a trail of blood from her bedroom into the street, and took her to Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas. Doctors discovered that the bullet had gone through the side of Heath's neck, leaving behind fragments that were too dangerous to remove without surgery, but concluded that the injury was not life-threatening. She was released a few hours later, whereupon she learned that Redmond had died at the same hospital. The bullet that had struck through her neck had struck him in the femoral artery, resulting in massive blood loss. Heath claimed that she felt relieved by the news, as she feared Redmond would have come after her, out of concern that she'd speak to the police about the shooting. In the incident's aftermath, the woman struggled with PTSD and was left unable to work due to nerve damage and intermittent pain that traveled down the right side of her neck and arm to her fingertips. Number 6. Nicole Dennison. Florida woman Nicole Dennison arrived at her home in Safety Harbor near Tampa to find her husband being intimate with another woman. On July the 22nd of 2020, she and 34-year-old Mark had been married for nearly 3 years and had 2 children together. He worked as a bartender and fitness instructor, and he'd made a number of social media posts praising his love for Nicole, with the most recent dating to March of that year. Upon finding him mid-tryst, Nicole attacked him. She punched Mark in the face, leaving him with a black eye, scratched his forehead, and also bruised his arm. Nicole, who at the time was employed as a flight attendant with Allegiant Air, then grabbed his acoustic guitar and smashed it against the wall, causing a gaping hole. Law enforcement arrived at the scene and took note of the damage that the 29-year-old had inflicted upon her husband and home. Officers also reported that there were indications she was under the influence of alcohol. They arrested her for domestic battery, a misdemeanor. Number 5. Charlene Gregory. 40-year-old Charlene Gregory and her boyfriend, whose identity wasn't released, were grocery shopping in Cheshire, England on February the 25th of 2021. They encountered 20-year-old Oceana Armitt, whom they both knew, outside the shop. At some point, Gregory was reportedly told by her partner that the younger woman had made flirtatious remarks towards him. The jealous mother of 2 then asked Armitt why she was looking at her boyfriend, to which the latter reacted by telling her to go away. As Armitt walked off around the corner, Gregory charged and grabbed her by her ponytail before taking her to the ground. She proceeded to bash her head against the pavement, leaving Armitt with grazing and a large lump. The victim alerted the authorities, who told her to go to the hospital and later arrested Gregory. Armitt subsequently recovered while Gregory was charged with assault. She had prior convictions for harassment, malicious communications, and breach of restraining order. Her criminal past had resulted in social services taking her children away from her. For the attack on Armitt, Gregory was given an 8-week jail sentence, suspended for 18 months, and ordered to pay her £250 compensation as well as attend an alcohol treatment program. Number 4. Gemma Hollings. In May of 2014, English police in Darwin, Lancashire, found a man lying in the street covered in blood and suffering from severe injuries. Officers learned that 30-year-old Paul Kirkpatrick had been attacked by his girlfriend, Gemma Hollings, at the home they'd been sharing for the past months. The police would describe the incident as a relentless assault and of the most serious cases of domestic violence they'd ever come across, specifying that the victim was lucky to have escaped with his life. He and Hollings, who was also in her 30s, were recovering addicts who'd been planning to get married. Kirkpatrick reported that the brutal assault had been sparked by a rather trivial argument about her hair straighteners. The wider dispute, however, was attributed to the fact that Kirkpatrick had failed to obtain the money that Hollings had asked him to get from his relatives. The woman beat him with her bare hands and squeezed his privates, causing intense pain. Throughout the prolonged attack, she struck him with a hammer and a hollow curtain pole. Hours after the hammer attack, she broke an empty bottle of ouzo over his head, then stabbed him in the neck with the jagged glass, exposing his jugular vein. Kirkpatrick eventually fled the home and was left with multiple cuts, a fractured eye socket, and a displaced cheekbone fracture, which required the insertion of a metal plate to mend. Hollings, whose booking photo showed her with a black eye, was convicted in October of that year. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison after being found guilty of 2 counts of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, 1 count of causing grievous bodily harm with intent, and 1 of wounding with intent. The Court of Appeal in London found in January of 2015 that the original sentence had been unduly lenient and increased it by 4 years. The incident prompted a broader conversation on the hesitancy of men to report cases of domestic violence. Kirkpatrick, who recovered in the aftermath and moved away from Darwin, was praised for coming forward, and the authorities encouraged others in similar situations to do so. Number 3. Star Perez. In April of 2018, San Antonio woman Star Perez and her husband Daniel attended a local festival called Fiesta before returning to their home. A row erupted in the couple's kitchen after 27-year-old Star accused her partner of having looked at other women during the festival. As tensions escalated, she grabbed a kitchen knife and told the man, "I could kill you right now. You don't even know I could kill you." Either before or after uttering the threat, Star swung the knife at Daniel, with whom she'd been married for 11 years and shared a child. She plunged the blade into the upper portion of his left arm. The bleeding man fled the apartment and called the police, who subsequently took Star into custody on a charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Number 2. Brittany Wilson. Law enforcement in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, responded to a 911 call on Christmas Eve 2021, made by a woman who claimed that she'd killed her boyfriend. Upon arrival, officers came upon the caller, identified as 32-year-old Brittany Wilson, standing in the doorway of the residence. A sword was also spotted on the property's front lawn. Upon searching the home, the police found her boyfriend, Harrison Stephen Foster, aged 34, dead in the bedroom from multiple stab wounds. Wilson told officers that for several months leading up to the brutal killing, Foster had had multiple entities living in his body, and also claimed that he'd been harvesting body parts from other people. The woman claimed that by stabbing him, she was setting him free, but also admitted that she and the victim had taken methamphetamine earlier in the day. Wilson, who adopted a wide smile in her mugshot, was charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. She was booked at the Cape Girardeau Municipal Jail on a $2 million bond. Wilson appeared in court on December the 27th and pleaded not guilty, while also requesting a public defender. Number 1. Ross McCullum. Less than an hour after going to meet her boyfriend on the evening of August the 6th of 2021, Megan Newborough was brutally murdered. The 23-year-old human resources specialist had been dating work colleague Ross McCullum, aged 29, and had gone to his parents' home in Leicestershire, England. McCullum strangled her in the living room, cut her throat with a carving knife to make sure she was dead, and then bundled her in the passenger seat of his car. He drove to a remote rural location near the village of Woodhouse Eaves. It was there that he threw Newborough's body over a stone wall into dense undergrowth, and the following day she was reported missing. The police traced her disappearance to McCullum, who initially claimed she'd left his home safely before eventually telling officers where they could find her remains. As of November 2022, McCullum had admitted manslaughter but denied murder, claiming that the killing had been the result of him losing control or suffering an abnormality of the mind. During his initial police interviews, he stated that he'd stopped taking his treatment for depression and ADHD and had become agitated when Newborough tried to touch him intimately. McCullum claimed it triggered memories of childhood abuse. He told her to get off and she allegedly slapped him, at which point the man fatally strangled her. The prosecution, however, aimed to prove that McCullum's actions had been calculated, arguing he'd made efforts to clean up the scene and texted Newborough to make it seem like she was alive upon leaving the home. Roughly 3,500 messages previously exchanged between the pair showed how the conversation had become overwhelmingly intimate, with McCullum demanding that Newborough call him Lord Commander during fantasized scenarios. The prosecution would argue it offered an insight into what truly lies beneath. Evidence also indicated that they'd already been intimate, and McCullum had reportedly shown nude photos of the victim to a colleague, seemingly unperturbed by the prospect of her finding out. After killing her, McCullum had viewed a YouTube video about serial killers and mass shooters, which, again, the prosecution argued was an indication of his predetermined mindset. Thanks for watching. Would you rather board a flight knowing the plane had a loose screw or have a serial killer as a roommate? Let us know in the comments section below.